Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tucker, and first of all, happy start of the NBA regular season to you all. I know all of you guys are so glad it's back, and so am I. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about something that actually came to my mind while watching the Celtics Sixers game last night. I realized that everybody kind of makes comparisons between the two teams as they're currently constructed, which makes sense, but they each also began rebuilding their current rosters around the same time. The Sixers started the process in 2013 by trading away Jrue Holiday on draft night, while the Celtics traded away Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce to the Nets in 2014. And when you watch them both match up with each other and how they've built their respective rosters, I started to wonder, did the Sixers screw this up? Now, please understand that this isn't some kind of opening night overreaction or anything. The Sixers are still very good and have some great young talent and future assets as well. But when you look at what is shown to be a pretty significant gap between the two teams in their most recent matchups, and you look at some of the steps along the way in the process for the Sixers, you could certainly make the case that even with the talents of Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid leading them, the Sixers kind of messed up the process. Let's begin in 2013, as I said, when Philly traded away Jrue Holiday on draft night for Nerlens Noel, the 6th pick in the draft that year. At the time, Noel was thought to be the best prospect in the draft for much of the college season before he tore up his knee and dropped out of potentially being the #1 overall pick that year. He certainly had some good moments in a Sixers uniform once he returned from injury, but never really developed into what they hoped he would become, and that 6th overall pick they got in return for Jrue Holiday, who's now a max player for the Pelicans and was named first team all-defense last season, turned into what became 2 second-round picks and Justin Anderson in a 2017 trade with the Dallas Mavericks in exchange for Noel. In that same draft, the Sixers selected Michael Carter-Williams out of Syracuse with the 11th overall pick, who went on to become the Rookie of the Year that season, and that was basically his high point in Philly. In 2015, he was traded to the Bucks in return for a Lakers protected first-round pick that wasn't conveyed to the Sixers until this past draft and was the 10th overall pick, which became Mikal Bridges, which the team traded away to the Suns for Zaire Smith and the Heat's 2021 first-round pick. In typical The Process fashion, Smith is already recovering from an injury, and the 2021 pick, although potentially pretty valuable, isn't helping the team right now, so that trade isn't helping them much at the moment either. Not to mention that Noel was drafted ahead of guys like CJ McCollum, who was the 10th pick that year, and both him and Carter-Williams were selected ahead of Giannis Antetokounmpo, who was the 15th pick that year. So in the first year of the process, the Sixers traded away Jrue Holiday for what became essentially nothing, and in terms of actual on-court value to this point, the same goes for the pick and eventual trade of Michael Carter-Williams. That is 2 lottery picks they completely missed on. Now we move on to 2015, a draft in which the Sixers held the 3rd overall pick. With that selection, they picked Trevor Booker. Oh, wait, that's not right. That's just what they got in exchange via trade for the player they picked with a top 3 pick just 2 years later in 2017. They actually picked Jahlil Okafor, who, just like Noel and Carter-Williams before him, showed flashes in Philly but didn't really sustain anything. Later on in that 2015 draft, guys like Kristaps Porzingis and Devin Booker were selected. Just imagine either of those guys with this current Sixers core, and even Justice Winslow or Miles Turner would have been fine, but nope, they ended up with Trevor Booker. I mean Jahlil Okafor. Who cares, they didn't get anything out of either of those guys anyway. And now we get to the incredibly complicated part that directly links the Celtics and Sixers together. Philly's decision to move up to the 1st overall pick to select Markelle Fultz, while the Celtics moved back and picked up Jason Tatum in 2017. Now, I understand that it is still very early for both of these guys, but to this point, the difference in on-court value isn't even close. Fultz is basically still a rookie that's going to be forever associated with the strange drama around his jump shot from last season until he proves otherwise. Meanwhile, Tatum is one of the bright young stars of the league that seems to be on track to become an all-star before his rookie deal is up. And just to make it even worse for the Sixers, in that trade, the Celtics will end up with the Kings pick in 2019 unless it becomes the 1st overall pick, in which case the Sixers would get it and give up their own first-round pick to the Celtics. Sacramento looks to be one of, if not the worst teams in the league this coming season, so there's a chance it becomes the 1st overall pick, but there's a much bigger chance that Boston ends up with another high lottery pick to add to their team at the expense of the Sixers. Now, even with all that said, I don't want to make it seem like Philly hasn't done anything right. The 2014 draft was outstanding. They got Joel Embiid, who's one of the best players at his position, along with trading back from the 10th pick to the 12th to get Dario Saric. And of course, they picked Ben Simmons 1st overall in 2016, who, despite shooting with the wrong hand and having a nearly non-existent jump shot, will very likely become an all-star this year in just his second full season on an NBA court. But when you look at it all, everything the Sixers put their fans through, being near the bottom in league attendance year after year, experiencing one of the worst stretches of losing any franchise in the league has ever seen, a combined 253 losses across 4 seasons before winning their first playoff series last season, is this really all they're going to get out of it? Embiid and Simmons are great, Saric is very good, and Fultz remains to be seen. But it really feels like this could have been so much more. They got 0 value out of the 3rd pick in the 2015 draft and the 6th and 11th picks in the 2013 draft, depending on the value of Zaire Smith and the Heat's 2021 first-round pick. And they could have had any combination of CJ McCollum, Giannis, Kristaps Porzingis, and Devin Booker. Instead, they got nothing. And if Fultz never becomes the kind of player he was supposed to, then their draft record might get even worse than it already is. But it isn't just the high-profile early first-round picks they missed on either. Part of the whole idea of the process was to get as many picks as possible, even late first and second round picks, to try and pull out a diamond in the rough that would be on a cheap deal for years to come. These kinds of selections are very tough to get great value out of, but the idea was that if they gave themselves enough chances, eventually they would find a guy like Draymond Green or Manu Ginobili or even Malcolm Brogdon. Instead, with the 17 different second round selections they held the rights to from 2013 to 2017, they ended up with exactly one guy that's become a solid NBA player, Jeremy Grant, who was a part of that same 2014 draft class with Embiid and Saric. But they even managed to screw that up and traded Grant away to the Thunder in 2017 for basically nothing, where he's become a really good versatile player for Oklahoma City. To be fair, they did manage to scrape together guys like Robert Covington and TJ McConnell from the undrafted free agent pile, and they have some young first-round picks that could still turn into something. But this is a key part of the process that the Sixers just never really got right. It wasn't just about losing to get high draft picks and turn that into stars, although as I've already stated, they didn't do that especially well either. It was about giving themselves as many chances as possible to gather as many assets as possible in order to create a championship caliber team, whether it be through the draft or trading for a star player. Now don't get me wrong, Sixers fans should be happy with the team they have. Simmons and Embiid are awesome young players to build around, and they still have a chance to continue to bring in pieces. That 2021 Heat pick, the potential for the Kings pick to land at number 1, and significant cap space in the summer of 2019. But if those things don't work out, then this is the group that they'll have to show for all of those losses during the process era. Simmons' impending rookie extension will take up all of their cap flexibility, so this is truly the last summer that there'll be real players there, with him and Embiid both likely being max players, and the odds of either the Kings pick or the Heat pick bringing them a true star aren't great. So now, as the team is on their 3rd different GM since the start of all this, you can't help but wonder not only if they screwed all this up, but also what could have been. Well, what could have been is exactly what the Celtics have right now. In 2014, they drafted Marcus Smart with the 6th overall pick, who's become a key member of their team as an energy guy off the bench and a great defender. In 2015, they drafted Terry Rozier with the 16th pick, who suddenly blossomed into a borderline starting level point guard that holds fairly good trade value around the league, but also comes off the bench for the Celtics. Then in back-to-back years in 2016 and 2017, they picked up rising stars on the wings in Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. In that time, they also swung a trade for Isaiah Thomas from the Suns and helped showcase him as an all-NBA level talent before dumping him and the pick that became Colin Sexton for Kyrie Irving. Before that, they also signed Al Horford and Gordon Hayward to big deals in free agency to give them a bit more star power. Sure, they missed on some late first-round picks and plenty of second-rounders, but they didn't just give away lottery picks like the Sixers have. They made smart trades and got good value in every single draft since 2014, and as a result have built a much more complete and well-built roster than what Philly has to show for all of their years of losing. Now, to compare these two rebuilding projects with the exact same standard isn't really fair, as the Celtics had more assets to trade away when they started, and they made the smart move of calling Billy King to help them move those assets to the Nets and swing one of the greatest trades in NBA history to start it off. And to just go back in time and say if the Sixers had drafted this guy or that guy, things could have been different, is obviously dangerous and a bit illogical, because that obviously would have changed records year to year. So if they drafted Porzingis in 2015, they might not have gotten Simmons in 2016 because they wouldn't have been bad enough to have the first overall pick, and I get all of that, which is why this isn't a definitive video. I'm not saying that the Sixers did screw up the process, but I am saying that as of right now, the Celtics have clearly done a better job of rebuilding their roster than Philly has, and they're clearly the better team right now. How much of that is a result of the mistakes the Sixers made is up to you to decide, but to me, yeah, they screwed up a bit. It doesn't mean they can't turn it around and still build a great team, but I don't think you can really argue that for everything the franchise gave up to get to this point, they should have ended up with more all-around talent on their roster than they have right now. And that is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Be sure to let me know down in the comment section below whether you think the Sixers screwed up the process. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thank you so much, and I'll see you all next time.